Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Bleeding Cool Comics Edition. And I drag a couple of my comic writers up here, where I'm just kind of helping them get their foot in the ground, and they're going to be doing their own thing soon. I am Kaitlyn Booth, the head film writer here at Bleeding Cool, and I am joined by Jeremy.
Hello, I'm Jeremy. I write about collectibles for Bleeding Cool.
And Josh.
Hello, I'm Josh, and I complain about comics all day and get paid for it. It's nice.
It's a fun job, isn't it?
It's
I complain about movies all day.
It's fantastic.
I never complain about toys. I don't know why.
You need to get your good. You need to get your good angst going.
I was about to say, I can't believe you have no toy angst. That surprises me. All right, what book are we going to talk about this episode?
Wonder Woman.
Wonder Woman.
Number 40.
I just realized I don't own any Wonder Woman toys.
What? You're canceled.
My daughter has some, but they're not here.
All right, brief summary about what's going on in Wonder Woman right now.
So she has a brother. She has a brother, and I haven't followed this entire story, but essentially what it comes down to is they're trying to stop the Silver Swan, who is an old Perez Wonder Woman rogue.
Okay.
And when this issue picks up, she's Jason, as in I think Jason of the Argonauts. I'm not entirely sure, but I think that's what the reference is.
Mm-hmm.
And it is. And Diana, Wonder Woman, are recovering from getting beaten up by Silver Swan, and are going to try to track her down.
All right.
And, yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. So before, when we were off mic, you said that you have a lot of feelings about this one, Josh. Was it you? This one that you said you had a lot of emotions about?
Oh no, actually, so this one is. There's not too much to say about it. It's
okay.
It's decent. It's readable, but it makes like a lot of like small missteps, and not even missteps. It just doesn't go as far with a lot of its concepts as it should, and those add up after a bit, and it just kind of leaves you with a comic that's just kind of.
Jeremy,
I've kind of felt the same way about Wonder Woman almost since Rebirth started. I liked the first couple of arcs with Liam Sharp doing the present day story, and Nicholas Scott. It was Nicholas Scott, right, doing the past stories. I believe that's who it was. And since then, it kind of feels like the book's kind of meandering, and that should not be happening with Wonder Woman right now. If there's one character that should feel energized by DC Comics right now, it's Wonder Woman, and the only place I'm really getting that is in Metal, where it feels like she's kind of taken over as the big hero of that book, and sometimes I feel like she's completely lost in her own title, and that's what I got from.
that's really weird. You're right.
Yeah.
Like,
it almost feels like they don't know what they want to do with it right now. Because I loved the Rucka stuff from the early Rebirth. It was phenomenal, and why it actually helped sell me on Wonder Woman as an addition to the movie, because until recently I wasn't the biggest fan. Captain Marvel was my main heroine. It still is, mind you. Nice jacket, by the way.
thank you.
Well, but Wonder Woman, after seeing the movie and like reading the Rucka stuff, like wow, yeah, she's awesome because she's got an emotional intelligence that Superman and Batman mostly lack, and she's way more compassionate than your average person wearing tights beating people up. Like she's willing to actually connect, try to understand what the problem is, and avoid the punching as much as possible. And I read Shea Fontana's stuff when she took over after Rucka, and while her entire arc wasn't great, there was like one really amazing issue in there that ironically the number 40 feels like it's kind of aping, but not as well.
Okay.
Which I actually talk a lot about in my review for it, where uh, well, I'll cede to Jeremy because I've been rambling a little bit here.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I've said pretty much what I have to say about it. It feels like it's just kind of treading water for some reason, and I can't really put my finger on why that is. Especially coming off the year the character had. I can't make heads or tails of it.
Like Justice League was not a good movie, but everybody walked away from that movie agreeing that she was the best part. So
yeah, and then she had her movie.
Yeah.
And just I don't understand why they're not putting more of an energy into making sure her book is as strong as it possibly could be for people coming into it right now.
There aren't any like big events on the horizon or anything that could potentially shake up the status quo. That this is just kind of, it needs to tread in water for a couple of issues before something comes along and blows everything up.
Actually, that's the funny thing, because this arc was supposed to be kind of like, oh, she's got a brother, which, again, my initial reaction was, oh, so we're going to shake up Wonder Woman by adding more dudes. Okay, I see how it is. But they put Robinson's the writer right now, and I've liked Robinson's stuff. He's usually, I mean, it's up and down. He usually does a good job of writing a book that kind of feels like it's trying to harken back to, old sort of like Dan Jurgens, where he's really good at writing like a classic feeling story. Now, they're not all winners though, but like I did like his last run on All New Invaders, and I think he wrote the last Squadron Supreme book. And those were both pretty fun. Whereas here, he just feels like a really wrong fit for Wonder Woman. Mm. It was a comparison I used for somebody else is like, imagine if Nick Spencer wrote Ms. Marvel. That would be a really bitter Ms. Marvel, and it would not really.
I don't know.
See, I understood both of those references. Wow. Yeah, I totally get it now.
Now, it's okay. Maybe that was you using a hammer but it's not okay. Maybe it's not that egregious, but it doesn't, because I'm really contemplating this for a second. But it's still just kind of, he feels ill-suited for the book. And the other issue that it kind of felt like was there was this issue during Shia Fontana's little short stint where there's this woman who has some kind of like inherited disease. I'm forgetting what that word is. Hereditary disease. And she's a doctor, and she was like treating Wonder Woman at like some UN base, and she tries to inject she drugs Diana and uses some of her genetic material, like in DNA, to try to essentially use Wonder Woman's pseudo divine physiology to cure her illness. And
this is what they did in the Amazing Spider-Man 2. And it was garbage.
It's way better than that. If nothing else.
That's not a very high bar to clear, though.
It's I mean, it worked for me because, again, it showed like an emotional intelligence. Wonder Woman actually feels a lot of sympathy for this person, as opposed to just getting immediately just like, oh no, you've stolen my blood and you're super muscular now. and this kind of feels like that because something similar happened to the Silver Swan. She was crippled. She was like caught in a caught in a fight between Wonder Woman and Major Disaster, and so I think. So she uses I think she uses some like a mixture of technology and like metahuman DNA, and she becomes a Silver Swan. And it feels pretty much the same way, except Wonder Woman isn't as sympathetic. It pays lip service to compassion, but it doesn't feel as genuine. Mm-hmm. And it kind of, again, it just, like I said, it feels like a lip service. Mm. And I don't know, I'm just kind of becoming uncomfortable with the idea of a trend of people with physical disabilities being really jealous of Wonder Woman and trying to kill or injure her, and they're all women, And so it just kind of feels like this whole idea of like, oh, look, everyone's so jealous of what it. And I said this in my review too. It pays to like that kind of nasty stereotype of like, oh, they're all women are jealous of each other, and it's kind of uncomfortable. I don't.
Yeah, that's not what Wonder Woman stands for.
Yeah, no. Like with Shea Fontana's story, it was like, okay, this happened once, and it actually kind of handled it with some tact. Whereas here, it's like, okay, now it's becoming a trend. What are we doing? And I don't think I'm not trying to assign ill intent towards Robinson. I just think that you just try to like, oh, here's an old character. Oh, here's a new take on her backstory that could be more interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't.
They're not handling it well.
Yeah, no. Didn't expect a comic nerd like me following the past 30 issues. Like, hey, what are you doing?
You're reading comic books, therefore they should always expect that because that's what comic book fans do. Because I say that with all love in the world of comic book fans, but that's what comic book fans. That's what they do. Really
obsessive about our favorite reading medium.
Obsessive, yeah, that's a good word. We'll go with obsessive. You got anything to add, Jeremy?
Nope, I think we've covered it.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, why don't we tell people, unless Josh has anything he would like to add?
The art was solid.
Oh, well, that's always good. At least it's not bad to look at.
Yeah.
It's even worse when it's like, oh, this story is not very good, and this comic is hurting my eyes because the art is not very good. So at least the art is good.
and the Silver Swan redesign actually looks really cool. It's
all right.
Less, more Hawk Girl, less skimpy.
Fair enough. All right. Jeremy, where can people find you?
You can find me writing about toys and statues and all kinds of fun things that we all wish we had space for on Bleeding Cool and on Twitter at Jeremy Ohio.
And Josh?
Lost in my own little world, but also on Bleeding Cool and writing about comics and such things, and on Twitter at Josh Davison Bolt because Thunderbolts are life.
And you can find me writing about TV and movies on Bleeding Cool, and you can follow me at Katie's Movies. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.